Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Jessica Devereaux in Baltimore. On Sunday, the center-right Social Democratic Party recorded its worst local election defeat in more than 2 decades. Though turnout was low, Portuguese voters have been angry over the increase in austerity measures and tax hikes. Now joining us to discuss the latest in post-election coverage is Walter de Broek. He's a freelance journalist based in Portugal, working since 2009 for several print and online media. Thanks for joining us, Walter.
Hi, hello.
So, Walter, let's first discuss the results. How big of a defeat was it for the Social Democratic Party, and were there any surprises in this election?
Yeah, it has been a very big defeat because the Social Democrat Party is a party that is deeply rooted at the local level. So losing a majority of cities, even smaller ones, has hit them very hard. At the same time, the opposition party has not won that much. Okay, we cannot talk about an overwhelming victory for the Socialist Party. So you see at the same time two interesting phenomena. One of them you already mentioned, that is the very low voter turnout. I think that's about only 52% of people went voting, and that is extremely low. That's historically low. And at the same time, you see in some cities that independent candidates, without the support of any big party, have managed to win a city. So you see at the same time people turning away from big parties and losing their interest in politics, you can say. And that those two are effects of austerity, clearly.
Let's talk about some more effects of austerity and the effect that it's really having on everyday people, especially the elderly. We're seeing their purchasing power of retired people. It's fallen by 20% since 2010, and other social consequences of the policy. Can you elaborate on some of those consequences?
Of course. Actually, what is austerity? In fact, that is since 2011. There has been a series of measures, starting with 3 rises in value-added taxes to a level of 23%. There has been wage cuts. There has been cuts in subsidies for jobless, for families. But as you say, one of the most affected groups has been the retired people. With one of the last measures that now is going to start on October 1st, is that there has been a 10% cut in pensions of civil servant workers. Even people who earn about not more than 600 euros per month. So as I said, these cumulated measures of austerity have caused a drop in purchase power, and as we've seen that not only let's say the share of people of these group of elderly retired people that are let's say nearing poverty has seen an increase to almost a quarter of all retired people. So you can say that today 25% of the 2 million elderly and retired people in Portugal are at poverty risk, and that's quite a lot.
Absolutely. So basically 1 out of 4 elderly people is at risk of being in poverty. Let's talk a little bit more about austerity and the bailout, a potential second bailout for Portugal. What are you hearing there on the ground about a second bailout?
Yeah, there has been some talking about a second bailout even during the campaign for the elections. Now, government has used it as a kind of let's see, a fear factor or some kind of a way to make people scared that if there would be a second bailout, austerity would continue and that they have to, let's say, behave well. But at the same time, you will see that government bonds for 10 years, for example, are trading still about 7%, and that's the critical limit, considered critical for country to finance itself on the bond market. So you see that at this moment, Portugal is not considered to be able to join again the normal financing system by June 2014, as it was planned in the first bailout. So what most people say here and think is that there is going to be a so-called second bailout, and that would mean a new package of financial aid, and that would imply again new austerity measures. So you can ask here who's benefiting from this situation, because it's kind of an emergency state on most people, because there has been the measures that have been taken over the last 2 years have a huge impact. Not only there's the situation of elderly, there have been mass unemployment. We are still on a rate near 17%. There has been mass immigration at the same time, so this unemployment is even bigger, as you want, because about 250,000 people, mostly young, skilled people, have left the country over the last 2 years. These are, let's say, consequences, social consequences that are very, very huge. And then when you, let's say, you combine them with the actual perspective of a new bailout, you see that austerity is here on a kind of a deadlock. There's no, the policies has failed, but they will continue them. So the big question is, how long can any country take this?
Yes, and it seems that there seems to be a growing rift from what people are experiencing on a day-to-day basis and what decisions the politicians are making in their places of power. Well, Walter, we'll certainly continue to follow this story. Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, thank you very much.
And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.